My name is Paige Everett, I'm 33, and I hold hands with dying people for a living. Last spring, the contractor fixing up the falling apart house my grandmother left me called in the middle of my shift and said, "Ma'am, we found something inside the walls." 10 minutes later he called back, and his voice had changed. "The police just got here, you need to come now." My parents had already taken every penny my grandmother had, every account, every dollar, and handed me the broken house like a consolation prize. What was in that wall didn't just change what I owned, it changed what I knew about every single person at my grandmother's funeral, and my parents' faces when they found out what the wall had been keeping. I'll get to that, I promise. Welcome back to Hidden Family Revenge, where family secrets come to light, and quiet people stop being quiet. Today's story has a steel box, a torn open kitchen wall, and a spreadsheet that turned a grandmother's love into a number. If you've ever been the one who shows up while someone else keeps the books, drop a comment and subscribe. Let me take you back to the beginning, which for me is the last 6 months of my grandmother's life. Helen Marsh, 84, retired math teacher. Sharp to the end and mad about it. When hospice got involved in the summer, I did something my agency lets us do quietly. I moved my schedule around so I could be her primary nurse. I've done this work 9 years. I can count a person's breaths from across a room. I know what a Tuesday sounds like when it's somebody's last Tuesday. And I will tell you plainly, because I'd want someone to tell you, caring for your own is different, and it costs different, and I'd do it again without blinking. 6 months of night shifts, medication charts, pillow adjustments at 2 in the morning while she graded imaginary quizzes in her sleep. My mother, Renee, managed things from 40 minutes away. She called every Sunday for 10 minutes, always with a purpose, the way accountants call. And every few weeks she'd drive in, kiss Grandma's forehead, and leave with a fat folder of paperwork to keep things organized. Bank statements, insurance, the property file. I remember watching that folder ride out the door under my mother's arm and feeling something I couldn't name yet. I told myself somebody had to do the paper side. I told myself we were a team. I had the hands, she had the books. It's a tidy sentence. I believed it for years, and my family made sure it stayed believable, and I want you to remember that folder, because everything that happens in this story was riding out the door under my mother's arm long before anybody opened a wall. To understand my grandmother, you need exactly 2 facts. 1. She taught math for 31 years and never once rounded in your favor. 2. She did not trust banks, and she came by it honestly. Her father stood in line outside First Merchants in 1933 with a passbook that said he had money, and the doors never opened, and he carried that passbook in his coat pocket until the day he died like a grudge with a leather cover. Helen kept accounts. Sure, you can't cash a pension check under a mattress, but she kept them thin. Whenever my mother pushed her to consolidate or invest properly, Grandma would smile with her teacher smile, the one that meant show your work and change the subject. She was funny about money the way old teachers are funny, tipped exactly 18%, mailed birthday cards with a $5 bill and a word problem. And she had one saying, her whole life, that we all treated like a joke. Somebody would ask where something was, the warranty for the furnace, the receipt for the roof. And she'd knock twice on the kitchen wall next to the spice cabinet and say, "This house keeps my receipts." We laughed every time. A math teacher's bit. "The house's filing cabinet, ha." She said it at Thanksgiving. She said it to the furnace man. She said it to me the last week she was really herself, hand flat on that kitchen wall like the wall had a pulse, and I laughed on cue, because I am apparently exactly as observant as everyone else in my family. She wasn't joking. She was never joking. She had told us all where to look, out loud, for 30 years. Grandma died in January on a Thursday, at 4:10 in the morning, which she would have appreciated. She always said the world is most honest before breakfast. I was holding her hand. My mother was home asleep, which I mention as a fact and not an accusation. I've learned the difference this year. The will was read 3 weeks later in a lawyer's office my parents chose, a man none of us had met. Everything liquid. The accounts, the pension remainder, the CDs, about $240,000 all told, went to my parents, Renee and Tom Everett. The house on Chestnut Street, built 1938, roof going, wiring original, kitchen last touched when Kennedy was president, went to me. As is, the lawyer said, twice, like a used car man. My mother reached over and squeezed my knee. You were always wrapped around each other, she said, warm as a heating pad. You should have the house, the memories. Around the room, my Aunt Carol nodded. My father studied his shoes, and everyone agreed how fitting it was. The nurse gets the memories, the responsible ones get the money. And I sat there with my hands folded, doing the thing I do at bedsides, which is stay calm while something dies. Because here's what I knew, sitting in that office, and could not prove. 14 months earlier, my grandmother had taken my hand across her kitchen table and said, "The house and everything in it is for you, Paige. Everything in it. I put it in writing with a proper lawyer." Those were her words. The will that got read that day was not what she described, and it was dated 5 months before she died, and nobody in that room but me seemed to find any of it strange. I want the record to show I did not roll over. I asked that same week, in my mother's kitchen, with my coat still on. There was an older will. Grandma told me herself. Whitfield and Rowe drew it up. What happened to it? My mother didn't flinch. She poured coffee, and she had the answer ready the way she has receipts ready in April. She changed her mind last August. Old people do that, honey. You of all people should know how they get at the end. She slid the new will across the counter. Notarized. 2 witnesses. A self-proving affidavit. Signed, stamped, every box ticked. I know because I checked the boxes right there at the counter while my coffee went cold. It looked perfect. That's the thing nobody tells you about paper. Real and fake look identical to a daughter standing in her mother's kitchen. Then came the family close. Aunt Carol, materializing with a casserole dish. "Sweetheart, your grandmother isn't even settled in the ground. Don't make this ugly." And my mother, wiping the counter she'd already wiped. "Somebody has to be the adult about money." That sentence. Underline it, because it comes back. I went to a lawyer that month, by myself. A strip mall consult. 45 minutes. She was kind, and she was blunt. Suspicion isn't evidence. A facially valid will beats a granddaughter's memory of a kitchen conversation every day of the week. "Bring me something," she said, "and there's a case." I had nothing to bring, so I did the only things I could think of. I wrote down every date while it was fresh, and I went home and put every birthday card Grandma ever sent me, decades of that steady schoolteacher signature, in a shoebox on the top shelf of my closet. I couldn't have told you why. Call it a nurse's habit. You chart what you see, even when you don't know yet what it means. The house they were so generous to give me needed $40,000 of work I didn't have. I had $18,000 in savings and a credit line I'd been keeping for emergencies, and I decided the house was the emergency. Not because it was smart. My apartment is fine, 8 minutes away. But because every contractor who walked through wanted to gut her kitchen down to the studs and haul it away in a dumpster, and I couldn't breathe when they said it. Then, Gil Andrusek came out. 66. Hands like a bag of hammers. A carpenter now, but a county deputy for 20 years before that. Half the town's porches were rebuilt by him, and the other half were arrested by him, is the joke. He walked the house slow, touched the door frames the way you'd touch an old friend's shoulder, and at the kitchen he stopped and stood a minute with his cap off. Turns out, he knew my grandmother. Danced with her at the Grange Hall back in the 90s, after his wife passed and before Helen decided she was done with all that. She could waltz, he said, which from Gil is a eulogy. He was the only bid that saved the kitchen. Roof first, wiring second, then we open up the water-damaged walls and see what we see. I hired him on the spot. He was loading his tape measure into the truck when he said the thing I'd file away and take out later, over and over. "Funny," he said. Helen had me reinforce a cavity behind that spice cabinet. Must have been 96. Bracing, plywood, the works. Never did ask her what it was for. He drove off. I stood in the yard with the porch light on and that little hook sitting in my chest. For a week, the renovation was the best thing in my life. I'd come off night shift, drive over with 2 coffees, and watch the house get honest. Tarps coming off the roof, old wiring coming out in brittle gray ropes. Gil worked with the radio on and didn't fill silence, which, if you do my job, is the whole friendship. Around town, the family version of events had settled in like weather. Aunt Carol told the church ladies how lucky I was that my mother had handled everything, all that paperwork, and the church ladies told me approvingly, at the pharmacy, in the produce aisle, like I'd won something. I smiled. You'd be amazed what I can smile through. It's a clinical skill. Thursday, I was on shift, mid-afternoon, charting meds at the kitchen table of a patient out on Route 9 when my phone buzzed. Gil. He doesn't call. He texts, short and blunt, no punctuation. I stepped onto the porch and answered. His voice was careful, the way men his age get careful when a thing has stopped being a joke. Ma'am. He'd never once called me ma'am. We found something inside the walls, behind the spice cabinet. You're going to want to see this. I asked what it was. He was quiet a second. Not on the phone, he said, and hung up. And I stood there on a stranger's porch with my heart doing a rhythm I chart on other people. I made it to my car. I had the key in the ignition when the phone rang again. Same name on the screen, 10 minutes flat between calls. The police just got here, Gil said. You need to come now. There was a patrol car in my grandmother's driveway, and the kitchen wall was open like a surgery. Lath and plaster peeled back, 1938 studs bare to the room, and behind where the spice cabinet had hung for my entire life, a cavity, braced, plywood-lined, built to hold weight. Inside it sat a steel box the size of a milk crate, welded handles, olive drab paint gone chalky. It took Gil and a young officer both to bring it down to the floor. My first reaction, and I say this as a woman who was about to be very invested in that box, I was angry about the wall. Then Gil took off his cap and explained why half the county was in my kitchen. I was a deputy 20 years, Paige. A box like this turns up in a house that just went through an estate. You don't pop it open with a crowbar and hope everybody stays honest. You call it in. Photographs, inventory, chain of custody, everything documented with a badge standing there. He looked almost apologetic. It's not that I don't trust you. It's that someday, somebody in a courtroom is going to ask who touched this box and when, and I wanted the answer to be boring. I have thought about that sentence for months. He was protecting me before I knew I'd need protecting. Quick pause, because this matters. If you've ever been the one who shows up, the hands, not the books, while somebody else in the family kept all the paperwork, I need you to tell me about it in the comments. I thought it was just my family. This year taught me it's practically a national tradition. They opened the box on the kitchen floor, on a moving blanket, with the officer narrating for his body camera like a surgeon dictating. Gold eagles in coin tubes, stacked like rolls of quarters from a dream. Older coins in oiled paper, wrapped the way you'd wrap Christmas ornaments. A brick of U.S. savings bonds with rubber bands gone crumbly. Layer after layer, 30 years of a math teacher quietly converting her distrust of banks into things that don't need a bank's permission to exist. The county sent an appraiser 2 days later, court-appointed, a man who breathed through his mouth and knew everything about Morgan dollars. His preliminary number, the one that made the officer look at me, and then very deliberately not look at me. $1.9 million. Say it slow. My grandmother, who tipped exactly 18%, who mailed $5 bills and birthday cards, had $1.9 million sleeping behind her spice cabinet, 11 inches from where she stood every morning telling the wall it kept her receipts. But the thing that stopped my breath wasn't the gold. Tucked down the side of the box, in a plastic sleeve, flat and patient, was a legal-size envelope with a law firm's return address. Whitfield and Rowe. The firm Grandma told me about at her kitchen table. The officer photographed it front and back before anyone touched it. Through the plastic, you could read the cover line, typed, dated 14 months before she died. Last will and testament of Helen R. Marsh. Gil looked at the envelope, then at me, and put his cap back on like a man getting ready for weather. "Well," he said, "now it's interesting." I found Sylvia Kang through the county bar referral line, and I knew she was right the moment she cleaned her glasses instead of saying congratulations. "Let me ruin your week efficiently," she said. "Finders keepers is for playgrounds. Everything in that box belonged to your grandmother, which means it belongs to her estate. Not to the house, not to the finder, the estate." I said the house was mine, and things found in it. She was already shaking her head. "Courts have sorted this 100 times. Money hidden in a wall isn't abandoned, it's mislaid. Put somewhere on purpose by an owner who intended to come back. It stays with the owner's estate, and her estate is governed by whichever will is standing." She let that land. The will that was standing was my mother's August version. Everything liquid to my parents. The box was about as liquid as it gets. "So if I do nothing," I said slowly, because I wanted to hear it out loud, "the wall money follows the accounts. Straight to the people who already took the accounts." "Correct. Your grandmother's 1.9 million would go out the same door as everything else." Then she picked up the envelope copy the court had released, the Whitfield and Rowe will, and read it in silence for a long 2 minutes. The house and everything in it. To page. The remainder to fund a mathematics scholarship at the high school where Helen taught for 31 years. Kang set it down and looked at me over the glasses. "This is a good will. Properly drawn, properly witnessed. Firm has the file copy. There's exactly one way it matters, and that's if you contest the August will in open court. So the question, Ms. Everett, is simple, and it is not." She folded her hands. "Are you ready to call your mother a forger in front of a judge?" That evening, I sat in the torn-open kitchen with Gil, 2 folding chairs, the wall studs bare in the worklight like an X-ray of the house. The county had carted the box off to a bonded vault pending the estate, so the cavity just gaped there, empty, braced, waiting. Gil told me about 1996. Helen had called him for what she billed as a small job. Reinforce a cavity behind the spice cabinet, line it, brace it, make it strong enough to hold what a wall should hold. He'd assumed canning shelves. "You didn't press Helen Marsh. She paid cash and made me lemon bars," he said. "Best documented transaction of my life, in the ways that count." Then he was quiet a while, looking at the empty pocket in the wall, and he said the other thing I kept. "Walls don't lie. People do." I asked if he'd known. He said no, and that she'd told everyone anyway, hadn't she? Twice a year at the holidays, hand on the plaster. "This house keeps my receipts." Every one of us laughing along. He got up, ran his thumb along the bracing he'd nailed almost 30 years ago, checking his own work the way I check a pulse. I made a decision sitting in that folding chair, and I said it out loud so it would be real. The wall stays open. Not one sheet of drywall, not one coat of paint, until this house gets the truth said out loud in a courtroom. Gil nodded like I'd specified a grade of lumber. "I'll leave the plywood loose," he said, and that was the whole conversation, and it was enough. My mother came to the house 3 days later, first visit since the funeral, carrying banana bread like a flag of truce. She toured the open kitchen with her lips pressed thin. All this mess for some coins in a wall. And then she got to it, because Renee Everett has never in her life made a social call. "The estate will handle the appraisal, honey. These things have procedures. Just don't sign anything until your father and I have looked at it." I said the court had it handled. She smiled the way she smiles at slow waiters. Courts make mistakes when families don't coordinate. Somebody has to be the adult about money. There it was again. Second time. Same tune. And I might have let it slide off me like always, except then she said the thing she shouldn't have known. Besides, 1.9 is a preliminary number. Metals move. It could come in lower and you'll all have embarrassed yourselves over less. I stood very still. the way I do when a monitor shows me something the family hasn't noticed yet. 1.9. The appraisal was preliminary, court-sealed, filed 2 days ago. I hadn't told her. Gil hadn't told her. The officer certainly hadn't told her. Somebody in that pipeline, the appraiser's office, the clerk's desk, someone, was keeping my mother informed, which meant she'd gone looking for a source before I'd even understood there was a game. She kissed my cheek at the door, banana bread accomplished, and drove off at exactly the speed limit. I stood in the doorway doing math of my own. My mother was not reacting to events. My mother was ahead of them. She had always been ahead of them, and I was only just now checking the clock. Here is where the story slows down, because this is the part I'd want somebody to sit with. That spring, the open wall became a place I went. I'd come off shift at 7, drive the 8 minutes, make tea in a kitchen with no counters, and sit in the folding chair in front of that empty braced cavity like it was a fireplace. Some nights Gil had left the work light on for me, which we never discussed. I read the photocopy of the real will so many times I could recite it, and on maybe the 10th read, sitting there at dawn, I finally saw it. The dates. Grandma signed the Whitfield and Rowe will 2 weeks after her first hospitalization, the one where they'd said the word we don't say, and she'd asked the doctor to please use numbers instead. She knew her timeline, and she signed a will leaving me the house and everything in it, then went home and had her lawyer's envelope sealed into the wall beside the gold. Not in a safe deposit box, where my mother's power of attorney could visit. Not in a drawer, where folders walk out under arms. In the wall. In the one bank she trusted. In the one branch nobody else could withdraw from. With a granddaughter-shaped key. Because that's the last piece. The one that undid me at 6 in the morning in a folding chair. She didn't leave me the house instead of money. She left me the house because she knew what I'd do with it. I fix things I'm given. I don't sell them. She'd watched me do it my whole life. Bikes, marriages, other people's last months. She bet everything on the one behavior of mine she could predict, and she told us where to look for 30 years. Out loud, laughing. This house keeps my receipts. The gold was never hidden from me. It was hidden with me. That morning, I stopped feeling like a girl who'd stumbled into a legal mess and started feeling like a woman executing her grandmother's actual plan. In April, Sylvia Kang filed the contest, and my town did what small towns do. It held a trial months before the judge got to. Aunt Carol worked the phones like a dispatcher. The official family position, delivered in the tone of a weather advisory. Paige is suing her own mother before the grave has grass on it, over coins, because a nurse got attached. The Church Flower Committee, which had sent arrangements to my hospice patients for years, quietly stopped confirming orders with me. 2 women I'd known since 4-H crossed the street outside the pharmacy, actually crossed, coordinated as synchronized swimmers. And the sentence came back to me third hand, the way boomerangs do. My mother, on the phone tree, patient and wounded. I don't blame Paige, I blame the money, but somebody has to be the adult about it. Third time. It sounds so reasonable, doesn't it? That's the engineering of it. It casts her as the grown-up and me as the child having a feeling. And it worked on people who'd known me my whole life because they'd also spent my whole life watching my mother handle everything. That's what 15 years of holding the folders buys you. The benefit of the doubt. Wholesale. What I want you to notice is what she never said. Not once. To anyone. She never said the August will was real. She said, don't make waves. She said, be the adult. She said, think of the family. There is a species of sentence that defends the teller without ever touching the facts, and once you learn its call, you hear it everywhere. I heard it every day that spring. I kept my head down, worked my shifts, and drank my tea in front of the open wall, which never once asked me to be reasonable. I found the spreadsheet in May, and I need to be fair while I tell you about it, because it's the closest I ever came to understanding my mother. Grandma's house still held one of Renee's file boxes, left behind from the folder era, wedged in the hall closet under spare blankets. Inside, between insurance summaries, was a printed workbook, cells gridded tight, my mother's handwriting in the margins. The header said, Reimbursement 2009 to 2024. It was 15 years of my mother's life, converted. Every DMV run for Grandma logged with mileage. Every tax season for the whole family, billed at an hourly rate she'd assigned herself, adjusted annually for inflation, which is the most Renee detail in this entire story. Grandpa's stroke year. The year she quit her firm at 49, mid-partner track, to run his care and everyone's paperwork. That year alone ran 40 pages. At the bottom, circled in red pen, a total, $612,000. My mother did not believe she was stealing. I sat on the floor of the hall closet and understood that with my whole body. In her ledger, she'd been running an unpaid invoice for 15 years, and Grandma's estate wasn't theft. It was collections. She gave up the partner track, her pension is thin, Dad's back surgeries ate their savings. All of it true. All of it in the cells. All of it real. For about 4 minutes, I cried for her in a closet. Then I turned to the last page. Below the red circle, in fresher ink, dated the day after that box came out of my grandmother's wall. A new line item, neat as a hospital chart. Wall find. TBD. One day. That's all it took her to hear about a box in a wall and open the workbook. I stopped crying. I photographed every page, twice, and put the box back exactly where I found it. Discovery, in a lawsuit, is where paper stops being polite. Sylvia Kang subpoenaed the file copy from Whitfield and Rowe, and the drafting attorney turned out to be very much alive, very much annoyed, and blessed with total recall. He remembered my grandmother the way you remember good weather. She brought peppermints, he told Kang on the record. Insisted on reading every clause aloud, corrected my comma usage. His firm's copy matched the wall copy line for line, executed 14 months before her death. 2 disinterested witnesses from his own office, everything gift-wrapped. And then he said the thing that reorganized my month. A will that clean doesn't just lose to a later one automatically. But a later valid will does revoke an earlier one. That's the whole ballgame. If the August will was real, Grandma had changed her mind. And I'd get my memories after all. Everything. The gold, the scholarship, the house money, my grandmother's actual last word, came down to one question with a date on it. August 14th. The day the new will was allegedly signed at my parents' kitchen table, before 2 witnesses, my grandmother allegedly present, upright, and of sound mind. Kang wrote the date on her legal pad and drew a box around it, and I watched her do it with a feeling I get sometimes at work, at 3 in the morning, when a chart and a patient stop matching each other. I already knew what August looked like. I had lived August in 12-hour shifts, but knowing something and proving it are different licenses, and the proof was going to have to come from the worst place I had. Kang looked up. Where was Helen on August 14th page? I said I'd need a subpoena to answer that properly. She smiled for the first time all day. Then let's get you one. The records came through the front door, the legal way. My agency's counsel, a proper subpoena, HIPAA boxes checked, because a nurse who peeks at charts without one loses the license she's trying to defend. 2 weeks later, Kang spread the August file across her conference table, and there it was, in the world's most boring font. August 14th. Palliative performance scale, 30%. Fever spiking through the afternoon. Morphine adjusted twice by phone order. Intake, sips. And the shift note, 0200 in the flat prose we're trained to write. Patient minimally responsive most of shift. Repositioned for comfort. Family not present. The nurse of record, signed at the bottom of the page in handwriting I'd know anywhere, because it's mine. P. Everett, IRN. I was there. Of course I was there. I was always there. The night my grandmother was supposedly 40 minutes away at my parents' kitchen table, sitting upright before a notary and 2 witnesses, executing a 2-page will with a steady hand. She was in her bed on Chestnut Street, running a fever, and I was the one wiping her down and counting her breaths and charting it all in real time, hour by hour. with no idea I was writing the most important document of my life. Kang went very quiet, the good kind. "This is the case," she said. "The whole case. A dying woman cannot be in two places, and one of the places kept minutes." Then she looked at me the way lawyers look when the next sentence has a bill attached. "You understand what this means. It's your chart. You're the witness. You'll have to read it out loud, in open court, in front of your mother. That night. Every line of it." I looked at my own signature until it blurred. Somewhere in me, a door I'd kept politely closed my whole life came off its hinges. Dr. Arthur Bell examines documents for a living and talks about handwriting the way sommeliers talk about rain. Kang sent him the August will and my shoebox, decades of birthday cards, canceled checks Grandma had mailed, a grade book from 1989 that the school had never thrown out. 30 years of Helen Marsh's real hand, the schoolteacher's signature that never rounded in anyone's favor. His report took 3 weeks, and I will spare you the microscopy, but the heart of it fit in 2 sentences. "A genuine tremor," he wrote, "is irregular. It wanders, it hesitates, it recovers, because it comes from a failing body doing its best." The tremor in the August signature was rhythmic, even, decorative. A healthy hand performing what it imagined shakiness looked like, pressing down with a confidence no 84-year-old at 30% had any business owning. Probable forgery, rendered in the cautious dialect experts use under oath, which Kang translated for me over the phone. He'll hold up beautifully. So we had the timeline, and we had the hand. What we didn't have yet was a crack in the 2 witnesses. The friends of my mother who'd signed under oath that they watched Helen execute that will at a kitchen table she never sat at. Kang mailed each of them a letter, the polite legal kind that reads like an invitation and lands like a subpoena, laying out, in numbered paragraphs, what the hospice records showed and what perjury runs in this state. Then we watched. Within 8 days, one of them had done nothing. The other one, a woman from my mother's Tuesday Bridge Club, hired her own lawyer before the week was out. Kang read that development the way I read a monitor. "That one," she said, "is about to remember things differently." The bridge partner folded on a Tuesday, fittingly. Through her new lawyer came a corrected statement, sworn. She had signed a paper at Renee's kitchen table last August, believing it to be, and she was told it was, a healthcare power of attorney needing witnesses. Helen Marsh was not present. She never saw Helen sign anything. She'd trusted Renee, because everyone trusted Renee, because trusting Renee was the family religion and half the town attended. The self-proving affidavit cracked with her, since her notarized oath was one of its legs. Kang allowed herself one nod, which for Kang is champagne. And then, because pressure has to go somewhere, the other side changed weapons. A new filing arrived that stopped pretending the August will needed defending and went after me instead. Undue influence. Their theory, typed up in respectable Times New Roman, a hospice nurse, embedded in the household, isolated a dying woman, poisoned her against her own daughter, and engineered the earlier will, the real one, in her own favor, 14 months before the death. The nurse gets the house, ladies and gentlemen. Follow the money. It was clever the way a knife is clever. Every fact I was proudest of. The 6 months, the night shifts, the closeness, flipped over and relabeled as grooming. My competence became access. My presence became pressure. My grandmother's trust in me became the thing I'd allegedly manufactured. Kang had warned me they might. And still, reading it, my hands went cold in a way they don't at deathbeds. Because deathbeds have never once accused me of causing them. There was a version of me that wanted to answer it on every porch in town. Kang's counsel was shorter. They're burning their credibility to buy a delay. Let them. Courts have seen this move. Easy for her. It wasn't her name in the filing. The anonymous complaint reached the state nursing board the following week, which I'm sure was a coincidence, the way rain is a coincidence when you hear thunder first. It recited the lawsuit's theory almost word for word and asked the board to review my fitness to practice. Anyone can file one. Everyone would guess who had. No one could prove it. The board did what boards must. Opened a file, sent me a certified letter, and my agency, kindly, apologetically, with HR present, moved me off primary care assignments pending review. 9 years of charts and nobody's complaint, and for the first time since I was 24, I wasn't anyone's nurse. I want to be honest about that week, because stories like mine usually skip it. I sat in front of the open wall on a Thursday night and built the exit in my head, brick by brick. Withdraw the contest. Sign whatever piece my mother drafted. The board complaint would evaporate. Everyone knew the tap it ran on. My license back, my patience back, my quiet life back. And the only price was every word my grandmother put in writing. I heard my mother's sentence in my own skull, in my own voice this time, which is how that sentence wins. Somebody has to be the adult. Be the adult, Paige. Fold. I called Gil instead of my lawyer because I didn't want counsel. I wanted a carpenter. He came over at 10 at night with a thermos, looked at the gaping wall I'd been guarding like a grave, and gave me the only advice of the entire case that I'd stitch on a pillow. You close a wall up while the wood's still wet, he said. You're just building a house for the mold. Then he poured 2 coffees and we didn't talk about it anymore. I slept that night. Friday morning, I told Kang we were going to the hearing. Kang, meanwhile, had been following the money backward, because forgery is rarely anyone's first crime. It's usually the paperwork catching up to sins already committed. She found it in the bank records Discovery shook loose, 6 months before Grandma died. While I was learning her medication schedule, my mother had used her power of attorney to restructure the accounts. $240,000 of Helen Marsh's money moved into a joint account with rights of survivorship. My mother's name on it. Effective immediately. Translation for those of us without the accounting gene, which Kang provided flat as a ruler. The money had already been taken while Grandma was alive. The August will wasn't the theft. The August will was the receipt. A document manufactured after the fact, so that what had been quietly moved would look, in probate, like it had been given. My mother hadn't gambled the estate on one forged signature. She'd built the whole thing like she built everything: redundancies, fallbacks, a paper trail curated to agree with itself. And that discovery came with a weight Kang didn't soften. A POA exists to serve the principal, not the agent. Self-dealing like this crossed out of family ugly into something with a statute number. If we won the contest, when the judge ruled the will forged and the transfer abusive, Kang was obligated to say the quiet part. This file walks itself to the district attorney. Elder financial exploitation. My mother, prosecuted, not by me, but not by me, if you understand the arithmetic of testimony. There was no longer a version of winning where I just got the house, and the gold went to math students and everyone healed over Thanksgiving. Winning now had my mother's name in a criminal caption. I asked Kang for one night. She gave me the weekend. My father was waiting by my car in the hospital parking lot on Sunday, which is how I knew it mattered. Tom Everett has never once initiated anything, including, family legend says, his own proposal. He stood there in his good jacket with his hands in his pockets and said more words to me in 10 minutes than in the previous 10 years. He didn't ask for money. He didn't say the will was real. I noticed that. He never said it either. He talked about my mother at 49, walking out of the firm with a banker's box the year Grandpa's stroke hit, mid-partner track, nobody asking her, everybody assuming her. About the retirement she doesn't have, the 2 back surgeries of his that ate what little they'd banked, the way she stays up doing everyone's taxes in February like a debt she can't stop paying down. I saw that spreadsheet years ago, he said, looking at the parking lot instead of me. I knew what it was turning into. I didn't say anything, because things around your mother run smoother if you don't. He finally looked up. I'm not telling you you're wrong, Paige. Everything you've got, I figure it's true. I'm asking if there's a way down the ladder for her. You're the only one left holding the brakes. The brakes. There it was. The job I'd held my whole life, offered back to me with love. in a parking lot, by a father I felt sorry for. And the worst part is how good it felt to be asked. That night my phone rang, my mother's name on the screen, and a voice I hadn't heard since I was a child homesick from school. Soft. "Paige, can I come over? Just me." She sat at my apartment's little kitchen table, first visit in 2 years, hands folded on a manila envelope she'd carried in like a covered dish. No banana bread this time. She looked tired in a way makeup doesn't fix, and she made her offer the way she'd have presented year-end numbers to a client she liked. Clean, sequenced, no wasted motion. "I withdraw the contest tomorrow, before the hearing. The estate settles under the August will, quietly. And she, voluntarily, within the family, papered as a gift, transfers to me 1/2 of everything in the box. $950,000, give or take the appraiser's mood. Run the numbers, Paige. Under your grandmother's will, you get a house and the scholarship gets the rest. This way, you get the house and more money than that will ever would have handed you. The board complaint goes away. Nobody sits in a courtroom. Nobody," the first hairline crack in her voice, "gets referred anywhere. The family stays a family. And here is the confession that keeps this story honest. The math was right. She wasn't lying, and she wasn't even wrong. Not on the spreadsheet. Withdraw, and I'd walk away richer than winning would make me, my license safe, my Sundays returnable. Fight. And the scholarship might get funded while I paid Kang and lost a mother." She watched me do the arithmetic. She'd always been able to see numbers move behind my face. And for a moment neither of us said anything, and the refrigerator hummed like a held breath. Then she stood, smoothed her coat, and set the envelope by my teacup, unopened. Patient. The way a trap is patient. "You don't have to decide this second," my mother said, already at the door. "Court's at 9. Anything before 9, honey, and this never happened." The door clicked. I sat there a long time with 2 documents in reach, her envelope and the photocopy of a will that a dying math teacher sealed into a wall because she trusted it to hold what a wall should hold. I lasted 90 minutes. Then I drove the 40 minutes to my parents' house with the envelope on the passenger seat, unopened, because some things you have to hand back with your own hands. My mother answered the door in her robe, and something in her face lifted when she saw the envelope. She thought I'd come to negotiate. I stood on the porch. I didn't go in. "One question, Mom. Your spreadsheet. 15 years. Every mile. Every hour. All of it priced." She didn't even flinch that I'd seen it. On some level, I think she was proud. "Then answer me this. Grandma's last 6 months. Who changed her sheets at 2 in the morning? Who held her when the fever talked? Where's that line, Mom? What's my number?" And my mother, and I want you to hear that she said this gently, like a teacher helping me find the answer, said, "That's different, Paige. That's what you're good at. Everyone contributes what they have." There it was, the whole religion in one verse. Her hours were an invoice. Mine were a donation. Money was contribution. Care was just personality. I put the envelope in her hands and I felt strangely calm, the way I feel at 4 in the morning when the numbers finally stop arguing with the patient. "Tomorrow at 9, Mom. I'll be the one under oath." I was in the car before she found a sentence. In the rear view, she stood on the porch holding the envelope with both hands, and the porch light timed out while I watched. And she didn't move to reset it. 40 minutes home. I slept like a woman with no decisions left, because I was one. The probate courtroom in our county seats maybe 40 people on oak benches that creak like a ship. And that morning it was full, because nothing sells tickets in a small town like a family with paperwork. Aunt Carol sat behind my parents with the church contingent. Behind me, Gil, in a shirt buttoned to the collar, holding his cap in both hands like he was in church too. Judge Ramona Voss ran her courtroom the way Grandma ran fifth period algebra. No theater. Show your work. Kang built it brick by brick. The Whitfield and Rowe attorney, peppermints and total recall, walking the court through a will executed by a sharp, careful woman 14 months before her death. Dr. Bell and his photographs blown up on the easel, the rhythmic decorative tremor, a healthy hand performing frailty, pressure no dying woman owned. The bridge partner, eyes down, voice small, telling the truth the second time. Renee's kitchen, a paper she was told was something else. Helen Marsh, nowhere in the room. Through all of it, my mother sat straight as a fence post at the respondent's table, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Still keeping the books. Even now. Even there. Their lawyer did what he had left. He stood up and aimed everything at me. The embedded nurse. The isolated old woman. The earlier will that so conveniently favors the caregiver. "We'll hear from Ms. Everett directly," he told the judge, promising the room a villain. And for the first time all morning, I stopped dreading my turn. He'd made one mistake, that lawyer. He'd guessed I would testify like a defendant, cornered, apologetic, small. But I wasn't there to defend myself. I was there to read a chart. Reading charts out loud is the one thing I have done every night for 9 years. Kang called me after lunch. I took the stand with the certified copy of the August 14th records, and when she asked me to walk the court through that night, I did it in my charting voice. The flat, even, 3 a.m. voice, because that voice doesn't shake. 2240. Temperature 101.6. Oral. 2315. Physician phone order. Morphine adjusted. 0100. Repositioned for comfort. Skin care. Patient minimally responsive. 0200. Minimally responsive most of shift. Family not present. Signature, P. Everett, RN. I looked up from the page, at Judge Voss, and gave the court the part that lives outside the chart. "Your Honor, that was my grandmother. I changed her sheets twice that night because the fever soaked them. Around 3 she was frightened and couldn't say why, so I read her times tables out loud until she settled. Numbers